So Paul Tassi had a good article. He actually put out a video about this too. It's literally a 2-sentence insider report on why Destiny 2 died. Apparently he's got an insider who explained things to him. And when he presented this analysis, what was crazy to me was that everything that he said was something that I have been talking about for the past month now about Destiny. And I didn't have this data. I didn't have any insider reports, right? All I had was just my analytical ability and trying to figure out what the hell happened with the very limited data that we have or had. And he confirms everything that I've been saying on my shorts and in my YouTube. So you had this very simple issue that they had with Destiny. Bungie had this ridiculous issue where people were playing, right? The numbers would bounce up and down, sure. But the fact is, people played the game, people liked the DLC, etc. But the problem was that they were not making enough money on the actual Bright Dust, the Eververse. Yeah, Eververse existed. Yes, Bright Dust existed, but they were not making enough money on it. Because you got to remember, if you have a live service game, right? If you have a live service game, that game basically financially lives and dies on the microtransactions. It should not be depending, as Destiny 2 was depending on, content releases. It's not about expansions. It's not about DLC. That is not how a live service game works in terms of generating revenue. He looked way younger in that. And the thing is, too, does anyone ever remember Destiny, or I should say Bungie, bragging about how much money they made with revenue, etc.? They never did that. I remember Michael Pachter mentioned how I think they made $300 million at one point in a single year or something like that. And that, I think, came out because of the Activision Blizzard lawsuit, where Microsoft and Activision had to reveal data that they didn't want to reveal. So we only knew about the $300 million, I think it was, because it came out in a lawsuit. So the little data that we did have showed that they weren't even making that much money. And I remember Pachter was even like, that's not that much money. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's interesting. So they never bragged about anything. They never talked about the revenue. They never talked about anything. So that should tell you, because we know these gaming companies, if something's going well, they're going to brag about it. If it doesn't go well, oh no, they're not saying anything. It's as if it doesn't exist. So that we know that that's how that works. So I remember thinking that's got to be relevant, right? If you ain't bragging, that means you ain't making money. That's not how it works, man. And the problem with Destiny is that it was very popular, but it just wasn't generating a lot of money in the typical way that a live service game would generate it, via microtransactions. It was generating most of its money from DLC expansion releases, and some of them didn't do so well. And when they did do well and there was money coming in, Bungie mismanagement. They spent it on stupid stuff. They didn't spend it correctly, and then they found themselves in a difficult financial situation. And by the way, Bungie was basically going to go bankrupt before Sony acquired them. So all that BS about, Sony ruined Bungie, no, they didn't. They literally saved Bungie, and apparently all the men are being fired and being replaced by women. It's probably not even a real picture, man. They kept expanding that universe, right? So there were just more resources being spent. And again, with more resources being spent, not enough money being made on the Eververse store via microtransactions, not enough money being made on the DLC, some of the DLC not working out well. It was just this recipe for disaster. And I gotta say, I will give the Bungie, the Bungie management was really, those guys suck and they ruined that company. But on a pure greed basis, I gotta give it up to them, because they had a company that was overperforming during COVID, right? They then sold it to Sony for multiple billions of dollars, and then they got out, incredibly, incredibly rich. They just got out, everything fell apart. They got out, Sony got screwed over, the employees got screwed over, but the guys running the company got their cars and got everything else. So it's those guys, just purely on a greed-based basis, yeah, they did a pretty good job. They sold the company at the highest they possibly could, made off like bandits and thieves, and then left everybody else to die. So on one hand, it's good job, but not really. F you guys. That's their silver lining, not ours. It's theirs. Yeah. But the fact is, again, it's Bungie had this weird situation where the game was popular, and they were making money, but they weren't doing it in the right way, and they weren't making enough money. And it was just what? How is this I don't understand. How do you mess this up, man? How does that happen? It's an interesting and I think good problem to have, because when you think about it like this, they can do another Destiny, and they probably will. They just need to figure out how to get those microtransactions on point, because the thing is, you've got a great IP, and people love it and they want more. That's great. That's wonderful. Now you just got to figure out how to make money via the microtransactions. So nothing that's gotcha, nothing that's pay to win, but just cosmetic stuff, but stuff that people want to buy, right? If you can make that happen, the next Destiny 3 gets greenlit and you got a plan. But Sony needs time to make that happen. And so I think that's probably what we're doing right now, waiting for that. But yeah, no, I think that explains everything. It explains why people are well, we don't understand. Why would you shut them down? Because they just weren't making money. They just weren't making money. And the money they were making was not enough, and it wasn't through cosmetics, it was through DLC, and that's not what they were. What the hell? And it's not, did that actually happen? And that's like, that's not, they weren't doing it the right way. They were screwing up. You got to make money with microtransactions. You got to make money through Eververse. And they had Eververse, but it wasn't making the money they needed to make. Too much focus on this stupid DLC. And yeah, that explains it. I mean, that's literally it.